Today we're talking about classifying rate of change. And as we know from our previous lessons, rate of change is also called the slope. There are two basic types of rate of change. The first one is constant. If a line has a constant rate of change, that means that the slope remains the same, creating a straight line. So far, every line that we have worked with has had a constant rate of change because they have all had straight lines. We also learned that a straight line means that it is linear. So constant rate of change is constantly the same. It's a straight line because the slope, the steepness never changes. The second type is a varying rate of change, which would be the opposite. The slope does not remain the same, creating a curved line. Another word for not a straight line is non-linear. So constant has the same slope. Varying does not have the same slope. Today we're going to use tables to see if we have a constant or varying rate of change. We could graph these, but that takes more time because when you graph it, you need to make a table and then graph. So we're going to learn how to use a table to identify if there is a constant rate of change. If yes, we're going to identify the rate of change, which is also called the slope. If no, we're going to justify our answer. So to do this, we have to find the increments. So we have to figure out how much x goes up by each time and how much y goes up by. An easy way to do that is to just write it on our graph. So if we look at example 1, I have this, I'm sorry, I should have said write it on our table. So we're looking at example 1. We want to see what our x's increased by. So from 1 to 2, our x increased by 1. From 2 to 3, it increased by 1 again. From 3 to 4, it increased by 1 again. So we know that x is our horizontal change. So our horizontal change is all the same. But we also need to check our y's. We need to check our vertical change. So as the x's went up by 1, which means that our run would be 1, our y's increased by 3. Because 3 to 6, you could just count on 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, that goes up by 3 again. 9, 10, 11, 12, that increases by 3 also. So our vertical change is 3 and our horizontal change is 1. Since all of the numbers are equal, that means the slope is the same. So that is a constant rate of change. And we don't really need to explain it. We just can figure out what our slope is. So we know that slope is how far up or down it goes, the vertical change, over how far sideways it goes, the horizontal change. So what will be 3 over 1, which is 3. Now we need to do the same thing for example 2. We're testing to see how much our x's increased by and how much our y's increased by. And you need to check all of the points. So x's, it looks like they increased by 1, because 1 to 2 is 1, 2 to 3 is 1, 3 to 4 is 1. So our horizontal change is the same for each part of our table. But now we need to check the vertical change. So from 3 to 7 is 4. Once again, you could just count on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That changes 4. But now 7 to 13, that's a problem. From 7 to 13 is 6. You could use your fingers, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that one's 6. And then 13 to 17 is 4. So this does not have the same slope for the entire graph. The x's increased by the same amount, but the y's did not increase by the same amount. So our vertical change is not equal. So this would be varying, because all of our changes in y should equal all of our changes in x. So how do we know? The y does not increase by the same amount. So our x's increased by the same amount there, but our y's did not. And now we have, let's continue. Sorry, I'm not sure what that did. So now we have example 3. Same thing, we need to figure out our x changes and our y changes. So this time our x's do not go up by 1s. So from 1 to 3, x increased by 2 there. From 3 to 5, x increased by 2. And from 5 to 7, x increased by 2. So far we're looking all right. Our x's, our horizontal change was all the same. So it always went over 2. But now we need to check our vertical change. We need to check our y. So from 3 to 8, it increased by 5. From 8 to 13, it increased by 5. And then from 13 to 18, it increased by 5 again. So our y changes and our x changes are the same. That means it is a constant rate of change. And to prove it, we can find out our slope. So the slope is the change in the vertical over the change in the horizontal. It's the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is 5, the change in x is 2, and that does not simplify, so our slope is 5 over 2. And the last part on this page, so we are just logically determining if it is a constant or varying rate of change. So our directions say to use the table to identify if there is a constant rate of change. If yes, identify the rate of change. If no, justify your answer. So you can't actually find the rate of change here because they didn't give us any numbers. So all we're doing here is identify if there is a constant rate of change and explain why. So those directions don't really match. Letter A says the amount you get paid washing cars per hour. Well, if that's your job, washing cars, then you get paid an hourly wage, and you're going to get paid the same amount each hour. So that would be a constant rate of change. because you get paid the same. Sorry. So you get paid the same each hour. The speed at which you run a marathon. Humans cannot stay the same speed continuously. So if you're running a marathon, which is many miles, that's going to be a varying rate. A car on cruise control can go at a constant rate, but a human that's running cannot, because you're not going to go the same speed the entire time. So what's our explanation? It will not be the same speed, which is an example of rate, the whole time. And the last one that we're going to do in this video before you practice, it says the price of gasoline per gallon. Now this would depend on if you're talking about when you're buying it that day, or if you're talking about the difference between today and tomorrow. So for this one, we're going to say as you buy it. So the price of gasoline per gallon as you or your parents, since your parents, you're probably pumping the gas. So as you pump the gas into your car. That one is going to be a constant rate of change, because the price per gallon as you are putting it into your car will be the same. So after you put your debit card into the machine and it starts letting you pump your gas, that price will not change during that sale. So the price per gallon is the same during that sale. Now you're going to try D, E, and F on your own, and then you'll turn over to the second page where there is another practice. You'll continue practice with tables, but then we'll also do a little practice with graphing.